Okay, it is time to start. It's 1:50. You are welcome to the NTP working group in Prague. You've already started the blue sheet, right? Or no, the blue sheet's sitting right there. So, so the blue sheet should be coming around. Folks should sign that. So today's agenda. Do you have that on display or? Okay, it doesn't. So our agenda for today, agenda administration and agenda bashing. We have Tal for the minutes. We have Rich for Jabber. Blue sheets are going around. Be sure to sign them. Did you skip? I need to go back. There we go. This is an IETF meeting. This is a note well. You all acknowledged the note well when you joined, when you registered for the IETF. And so everybody should be well aware of it. Please abide by it. Okay, so our agenda, this is the agenda bashing. We have the Tictoc working group status, the NTP working group status, and both of these are just quick reviews of documents that we're not going to need to spend a lot of time talking about today. We'll just talk about what status they're in. We will cover the hackathon activity over the weekend, and then we will talk about the rough time draft that was submitted, I just lost the name of Neta's draft, Neta's technology. But anyway, the draft on secure selection filtering from Neta. Chronos, there we go. I was thinking Crony, and I knew that was the wrong word. I was like, it's not Crony, it's And very briefly on the Yang data model, I know the authors can't be here, but I have an update from them. And then the piece that's currently missing is any other business and housekeeping. So we'll at the end of these, we're going to talk about a number of the other items. If you look at the agenda online, you'll see the list of other things I wanted to go through quickly that did not have updates in advance of the IETF. If you've been following the mailing list, we got a ton of traffic today. So I haven't, I've been busy today, and I haven't had time to even read it all, except seeing it go by. So there we have it. So the first one, however you're displaying that, it's not advancing one slide at a time. So this is not working. Okay. So the Tictoc working group status, the Yang data model has made it out, and it's in the editor queue now, which is great news. And the second document, which is the last document remaining in the Tictoc working group, is the enterprise profile. We addressed all of the nits yesterday, and an update thanks to Heiko. Thanks to Heiko. And so that one is ready for submission. We will still have the same, we will deal with the issue of the IEEE 1588 the same way we did last time, and hopefully that will not cause too much issue. Next. Oh, Suresh is popping in the queue. Oh, good. Go ahead, Suresh.
Yeah, thanks, Karen. So I'm trying to formalize the process with the ESG for that. So I'm writing up something. So we will make this like a standard procedure when the documents are not freely available. So this will be like IETF-wide procedure that we follow whenever some document is not freely available when it goes to last call.
Okay, great. Thank you. You always know you're being successful when you require the development of a new process or a new procedure. So, so that's where we are with the 1588 enterprise profile. And then we've had a number of conversations about this. The intention is when this document gets through that we will close the Tictoc working group and have a single time working group in the IETF, consolidate all the resources in one place. So next slide. So this is the NTP working group status, and these are documents that we should not have too much to talk about. The BCP is in IESG evaluation. It currently has one outstanding discuss on it, and the authors of the document are working to resolve that discuss, and hopefully we will have that done shortly. Oh, and Suresh is coming back into the queue.
Hey, thank you. So the outstanding discuss is from Ecker, and he's going to leave the IESG. So I have to talk to him and figure out, like, how he wants to follow up on the continuity of the discuss. So like whether Roman is going to take it up, or like we have to figure something out. But either way, I will not have enough votes on the IESG when the IESG turns over tomorrow. So I have to figure out like how to get the additional reviews to get this document through. But hopefully it should not be too difficult once the authors address like Ecker's comments.
Okay. Dennis, I know that you worked. I don't know if you want to say anything. If you can hop in the remote queue. Oh, there you go, Dennis.
Hi there. Can you hear me?
We can. Go ahead.
So Dieter and I have been working directly on those remaining discuss points, and I consider them valuable feedback, but nothing that really changes the course of the document. So regardless of how what's going on with the IESG, Dieter and I have agreed on the changes that need to be made, and Harlan's been involved also in monitoring this, and so I plan to push out an update today. I'm not sure if that makes a difference in terms of getting this pushed along, but regardless of whether or not that timeline works or not, I mean, I'm prepared after this meeting to go through and make these minor edits and submit it.
Okay. If you could go ahead and do that, I think that would be great. I think.
And also respond to Eric.
Okay, so I'm going to pop you off the queue and let Suresh talk for a minute. You can get back in if you need to.
Yeah, thanks, Karen. Hey, thanks, Dennis. Okay, like I really appreciate your patience. Like I've been talking to Ecker, like his discuss has been there for a while, but he's trying to clear his own queue for the incoming AD. So he prioritized like his documents, which I totally understand because he's swapping off. And so thanks for your patience on this, and really appreciate you trying to get this resolved. If we can push a document today, I'll try to get this on the next possible telechat, and we can go from there. Okay. So, but the ball is really in my court. Once you push the issues off, I'll try to find the other additional ADs to vote no objection on this, so we can get enough votes to pass this.
Okay. Thank you, Suresh. Anything else on the BCP? Okay. There's two documents that have been ready for submission for a while now that we just haven't submitted, and we will be doing that very shortly now. And that's the control messages protocol, and and this one, as a reminder to folks who haven't been following this, is basically cleaning up the work that we did to when we wrote NTP, when we did the NTPv4 specification, it's cleaning up a piece that got left out. Guidelines for defining packet timestamps is also one that's been ready for submission. It's past working group last call, and we just need to get it processed. The next one is NTS for NTP. This is one we spent a lot of time talking about. Did you want to talk about?
Yes, NTS for NTP, after the last interim, we made an update. There has been some new content from Krista regarding one of the NTS key exchange record messages, and this has been done, and we are speaking about the hackathon results afterwards. So this has been possible, positive, and we are looking forward that we can move this forward.
Daniel Franke. So actually, I think we're going to end up with two minor clarifications coming out of the hackathon. What was just discussed is one of them. Just pointing out that NTSKE uses a different length convention from NTPEFs. The second clarification I'm going to drop in there is clarifying what clients should do if they maybe send in an excessive number of placeholders that could lead to fragmentation.
Okay, thank you. I was trying to determine if your voice was coming through the microphone system or not. It's on, okay.
Have to speak more closely. Or something.
Yeah, so everybody speak really close to the mic. Nobody has complained, but but we do have a fairly long list of remote participants. So everybody remember to speak into the mic. That's right. All right. So Thomas says Thomas can hear you. So we're all great. That's fabulous. Okay. So that's the NTP working group status. The next item on the agenda is the hackathon report. So.
Okay, hi. My name is Christopher Einigel. I'm one of the newbies here today, so I guess that's why Karen wanted me to have this presentation. So, well, I was here Saturday, Sunday. We sat in a big room for 13 hours hacking on NTS. And I think, who were there? Watson, Anshul, Richard. Who else was it? Dieter, Karen were there. Did I forget somebody? Well, all of them were there in person, and we had a bunch of remote participants too. So we had people working on Crony, on NTPsec remotely. So a lot of things happened. And I guess next slide, please. So we did a lot of integration. As I said, got NTS to work inside of Crony, inside of NTPsec. Martin Langer, who's not here today, he has his own implementation in C++ that we also interoperate with. I have my own little implementation, a proof of concept in Python, and that also worked. And most of the work here was done on draft 17. Richard was also there, and he was working against version 11, I think. And well, next slide again. Thank you. So this is the compatibility matrix right now. So Australia client, that's Martin Langer's client in C++. The Crony client was, let's see, that's Miroslav, who's working on Crony. The NTPsec client, Hal Myray, was involved, did a lot of work on that one, and a lot of other people who also ran NTPsec. The NetPython client is mine, a quick thing I did at work a few weeks ago. And we also had some people from NetNode in Malmö who were participating on their own time, and they have a client in Go, which is sort of partially completed. And on top of that, Watson Lad and Anshul are working on a Rust implementation. And as you can see, all the sort of Westphalia, Crony, NTPsec, Python, they all interoperate with each other. The Golang client from the team in Malmö, they only have a client so far, and it only does the key exchange, but that one works with the Westphalia server, the Crony server, and my server in Python. It does not currently work with the NTPsec server, and that is due to the NTPsec server, I think, is using an old SSL library that doesn't support ALPN. So that's a sort of known issue. We need to work around it, but it's sort of everything inside the protocol works just fine there. And then Watson also did a server in Rust, which implements the key exchange. We can talk to the server. All implementation can talk to Watson's implementation. Anything else? So all of us had bugs. I had a few crash bugs. There were some other issues. We had an issue with OpenSSL. OpenSSL 1.1.1 has 1.1.1a has a bug in the key exporter function, which means that we have a rather long string for exporting key material, and that string doesn't work with 1.1.1. So Martin Langer, when he did his implementation, he had to use a shorter string. So some of the issues we had was that some people were using the long string in their clients while the server was using the short string, and vice versa. We've decided we'll just go with long string now, or everybody has switched to long string now, because there is both a newer version of Business SSL available and an older version. And we didn't really find any issues with the NTS draft in itself, as far as I can tell, not when it comes to implementation. We followed the implementation. If we read it by letter, it did work. A few things were a bit unclear, might need a bit of clarification, but I mean, it all seems to work rather well. I'm quite impressed that we have 4 working implementations today. And maybe last slide too. That's all the people that were involved in the hackathon yesterday, both remotely and in person. Okay, thanks.
All right. So we've already sent NTS through working group last call. We've now done 3 hackathons on it. So I think we are. They're going to do we haven't done, no, the clarification hasn't been pushed yet. No, I haven't looked. Yeah, not yet. So we're going to do a minor clarification on a thing that a number of implementers implemented wrong, and then we will, in the sense that the spec was not clear about what they needed to do. That once that clarification is done, then this will be ready to go to the IESG. All right. All right. So next up is, I think, rough time, right? Angela? Oh, I guess I should have asked, are there any questions about the, did you go ahead? Sorry, Anshal.
Yeah, just a slightly pedantic note on the clarity issue. The spec was perfectly clear on what NTSKE requires, and everybody did that correctly. The clarification we're going to be inserting is that a lot of people didn't properly read 7822 and made an invalid assumption about that. So we're just going to point out that pitfall.
Okay. Great. Thank you. It's a better description of the clarification. Okay. Now, Anshal. I don't know that. I don't think it's synced well.
Can you hear me? Okay. Hello, everyone. I'm Anshul Malhotra from Boston University, and today I'm going to talk about Rough Time, a draft that we submitted in collaboration with Adam Langley, who is the original author of Rough Time from Google, and Watson Ladd from Cloudflare, who implemented or deployed this at Cloudflare. You and someone else. Yeah, we submitted the first version of this draft back in January of this year. And following that, we had a virtual working group call wherein I explained the protocol, and we discussed the issues that were not addressed in the draft at the time. Some of them we decided that need to be addressed in the draft, and some other issues are not that pressing. Post that, we updated the draft, and we had some comments on the mailing list, some clarification questions. Some of them have been addressed on the mailing list. There are a few that needs a resolution, that needs some discussion. But the clarification questions have not been updated in the draft. That we'll update in the next version of the draft. So for today's presentation, I'm going to give a very high-level overview of what the protocol is, and then open the stage to comments and discussions, because that's what we want to achieve at this IETF, like have people's input on on the outstanding issues. Okay, so the motivation behind rough time is basically it's undeniable the fact that security is important. Time is important for internet security, as many applications and security protocols use time. Unfortunately, widely deployed protocols such as Network Time Protocol, which is standardized in RFC 5905, and a newer proposal, a variant of NTP, Chronos, they are not authenticated and do not provide any response authentication. Then we have a symmetric key proposal for NTP, which uses MD5, although that's been deprecated now. It does provide authentication, but there are serious issues with it, which have been known for years now. So is the case with NTP Auto Key. However, the new proposal, Network Time Security, that we just discussed, that also provides authentication, but it does not provide a proof of server misbehavior. And what that means, I'll explain in the next slide. Whereas rough time achieves both the goals. It provides server authentication as well as a cryptographic proof of misbehavior of a server. So what is rough time? It's a protocol that achieves rough time synchronization. It is not as accurate as other time synchronization protocols as it stands today. Second, it detects the servers that provides inaccurate time. And most importantly, it provides a cryptographic proof of a server's misbehavior that can be verified by a third party. There are several applications for rough time. The original motivation when when Adam Langley at Google proposed this approach was certificate verification. Google did a survey that found that 25% of failures of certificates is because of bad clocks on the clients. So, and we know that certificate verification, meaning does not require accurate timestamps. It does not require super accurate timestamps. It does require rough time. It does require the client to be roughly accurate. And there are several other applications where the client does not necessarily require super accurate and precise time information. Such as delegated credentials lifetime, delegated credentials, you can think of them similar to certificates. They have validity periods which need to be verified before they can be accepted. Similarly, IoT devices or other embedded devices that cannot update their system time very frequently can use rough time. And recently, someone from Tor mentioned that they would be happy to implement or use rough time for their service directory. So these are a few applications. I'm sure there are several other applications for rough time, but these are a few motivation applications for that. Now, there are several issues that were raised on the mailing list and during the virtual group meeting. So first issue is that of time scale, that what time scale should be used for timestamps delivered by a server in the response. So what we have currently in the draft are these three values, mid-p, which are the number of microseconds. The server in his response sends this value, which is the number of microseconds since the Unix epoch. Then we have another variable read_i, which is the server's estimate of the accuracy of the time that it sends at the time that they compose the response packet. And then there is this leap indicator, which is basically the offset between the TIE and UTC timescale at the time that the server constructs this response. So There have been several suggestions on the mailing list regarding what we should do about this timescale, but there is no consensus yet. And at the end of this presentation, I would like to hear comments and thoughts about that. Then there is another issue which is less pressing, but I guess we need to address in the draft. It's about trust anchors and policies. So the bigger picture for rough time is to have an environment where we can have several trusted rough time servers, and for that we would need, I think, a trust anchor that can basically maintain and distribute this list of trusted servers and enforce certain policies, such as where the clients can submit or discuss or complain about the misbehaving servers that they detect through this rough time protocol. And there are several other policies that the trust anchors can enforce, such as generally checking the health of rough time servers, whether they are checking their uptime or how accurate they are compared to some reference time. So we need to decide on who these trust anchors can be and what kind of policies they should be enforcing. And with that, I'll I need not say anything.
Tal Mizrahi, Huawei. So I said this on the mailing list, but I'll say it anyway. I think this is a security draft, and one of the most important things it should start with is a threat analysis, which describes exactly what are the threats we're trying to deal with and how we deal with each of them. Some of them may not be relevant to this draft. Some of them maybe this draft deals with, others it doesn't deal with. It needs to be very clear. Can you go back to slide 2? So go up one slide. So this is not detailed enough in my opinion. When I read this in the draft, I couldn't understand what rough time does and what it doesn't do in terms of threats. So that's, in my opinion, the first thing. The second thing is that there's a fundamental problem of delay attacks, which is also something we discussed on the mailing list. And right now, the draft doesn't resolve this problem. I understood from offline discussions that in practice, the implementation of rough time does deal with delay attacks in some form, but this needs to be described in the draft, and it needs to be explained exactly what is the scope of the damage a delay attacker can do. So I think these are two very major issues right now for this draft.
Yes. Yes, some of the comments that you mentioned were on the mailing list, and we discussed about it. But definitely, a threat model, Watson and I discussed, need to be added to the draft, and we'll do it in the next revision of the draft. Yes. Yeah.
And regarding delay attacks?
Yes, sure. Yeah, that's a part of the threat model, and we'll be.
I think it's not only a threat model; it's also adding a new mechanism which is not described in the draft. Because right now, the way it's described right now, a delay attacker can do anything he wants. Right? We described examples on the mailing list which show how a delay attacker can basically completely compromise rough time.
Yes, I did reply to that. I think we are not on the same page with that particular attack that you described. But maybe we can discuss it more. Yeah.
Okay, so please reply on the mailing list because I haven't seen a reply from you to that topic.
For the delay attack, I did have an explanation on the mailing in the response. Maybe you missed it, but I can point you to it again. Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
On the issue of on the issue of policy for maintaining trustless servers and what they should be expected to do, I think what's in scope for the draft is mechanism for getting trusted lists, or how exactly to construct a proof of malfeasance and check that proof. I do not want us to get too far into layer 8 policy in this draft. Let's not be the cat form here. Secondly, though, I do hope we can see a call for adoption for this draft soon. I had some earlier objections that the draft may not be within our charter, but I got pretty clearly slapped down on that by the area directors, who basically said, take it up here and fix the charter later. So fair enough. Let's get a call for adoption going.
Yes, regarding your first comment, I just mentioned it here because it was about the trust anchors and policies, because it was briefly discussed in the first virtual group meeting. Yeah, but as I said, these are not the pressing issues that need to be addressed in the draft, but I just put it for the sake of completeness.
Yeah, Thomas Peterson via Jabber. I would like to contribute further to the draft. However, the GitHub repository does not appear to be up to date. Please use issues and keep the content there up to date. GitHub issues.
All right.
So I'm a co-author of a draft. I just want to issue clarification. Yeah, so as Daniel mentioned, the trust policy question isn't really a question of saying policy. It's really a question about the mechanism, and more importantly, I do think we want one global place where the reports of malfeasance are discussed, because it is going to be a sort of ecosystem impact if there's one server that everybody should distrust. Now, maybe not everybody trusted in the first place, but I think that's an important question. The other thing with regards to policy, yeah, we shouldn't set it, but I want to emphasize that unlike CAs, there is no cost to distrusting a server, because there are other servers just as good. You don't have the problem that browsers have where kicking out a CA is extremely expensive.
Right. Leif Johansson, I'd like to second the first speaker in asking for a threat analysis and a threat model, because it's like the first thing I did in this industry back when I was a kid was to set up NTP infrastructure, right? And on the first sentence of the first page, right, there was like have multiple sources of time, right? And the objective of the exercise is not to have, I understand that there is this attraction to having provable statements about models, but the interesting model is actually the clock on the machine, because that's the thing that you use, the operating system's view of time. That's what you use when you evaluate certificate trust, for instance. And it's, there are many ways to counteract single server malfeasance in the other protocols by having more sources of time, right? That's what we traditionally done in deployments of NTP infrastructure. So I think if we're going to have like provable security proofs, let's have it about models that actually are relevant to like the uses of secure time on the operating system. And that's not necessarily about any given statements about any given protocol we use to get time onto the operating system.
Christoph, go ahead.
Yeah, can you guys hear me?
We can.
Okay. First point, more on the meta level, methodically, please everyone state their names when they go to the microphone, because the remote participants cannot see you. I know all the voices that have spoken, so this is not an issue. For me personally, the thing that I wanted to talk about was Tal's comment about delay attacks. Having thought about it back when the discussion was had, I'm not convinced that delay attacks really affect the thing that runtime does, because runtime does explicitly refer to the ordering of events and then the timestamps that are connected to the events from different servers. So even though delay attacks are possible, they would look like malfeasance, and I think at least Runtime should detect that something is wrong and have cryptographic proof that something is wrong. Although probably the client could not differentiate between a server that was being attacked and a server that was intentionally sending bad time, but still it would have a report that something happened. I think that is very valuable. I also don't think that there's much more to be done from a client perspective than seeing that the incoming messages from a server are somehow not right. Differentiating whether that's because the server is bad or because there's an attacker seems impossible, and it's at least a very difficult task.
Thank you. Go ahead.
All right. Hi, this is Marcus Nazarian. I've mentioned before a couple of times, I really like this draft, and I think it shows promise, even if it still needs some work before it sort of gets all the way. To eat the microphone, you say? Better like this?
Yes.
Oh, great, thanks. So I'll just make a couple of quick comments. The first is regarding which timescale we should use. The currently suggested one is still TAI, right?
In the current draft?
Yeah. So, and I've had it pointed out to me that the BIPM explicitly recommends against using TAI and recommends UTC instead. And in connection with that, it was also pointed out to me that essentially any protocol that distributes time needs to be able to tell the user what the source of that time is. One reason is so you know which actual time scale you are tracking, which probably isn't that important here since we're only interested in rough time. But what is important is since we're starting to track malfeasance here, and we're starting to distrust servers that give us the wrong time, we could end up in a situation where we have several servers that use the same source of time where the client doesn't know that. Say we have a bunch of servers that are using GPS as a time source, and GPS starts distributing the wrong time. We can either end up with accidentally starting to track this erroneous GPS time, or we can accidentally start distrusting all the servers that happen to use GPS. So that's one argument for actually including some sort of source information in the protocol. I think I'll stop there. I'll just note also that trust anchoring and what we're actually trusting is something we need to talk about. And I just want to agree with what Daniel said before about lay rate issues. Policy-wise, probably shouldn't be in the draft. It's more of an implementation and ecosystem issue. Okay, yeah, sorry for the long talk. Thanks.
Thanks. Yeah, the draft has a section that says that the servers should use a common, highly accurate source of time, such as GPS or, yeah.
Rich, for Jose and Thomas. Jose had a question about what's the precision, and Thomas answered in Jabber that it's a microsecond. So.
Daniel Franke here. I don't think Christoph's earlier comment about delay attacks is correct. The possibility of a delay attack is already baked into those into those Merkle proofs. The impact of a delay attack is rather that the longer a network adversary delays a packet, the more the server might be able to be off before the client would be able to construct a proof that it's off. So there's no way for the client to distinguish in a proof between the case where the server is 2 seconds slow versus the case where the server is accurate, but a network adversary delayed the packet for 2 seconds. Nonetheless, the client can compute the 2 second bound on how much the time it's getting might be off. But just the longer the network adversary delays something, the harder it is for the client to construct a proof of malfeasance.
Yes, and as I explained on the mailing list, this variable red I that tells the server's estimate also bounds the delay between med p minus red I, and yeah, there is a whole explanation on the mailing list that you can check. Yeah.
Before you start, are you on the delay?
No, I'm on.
Can I let Christoph respond? Because my guess is he is. Can you respond to Christoph first? Sorry, Leif. Go ahead.
So following up, Tom Mizrahi, following up on what Christoph said in response to what I said. So a very simple example, let's say we have a server which is off by 1 second. So what we would expect is for Ruftime to be able to identify that by having the causality broken. But what that server can do is just delay the message for 10 seconds before sending it back to the client for 10 seconds, which would hide the fact that its time is off and would cause an error which is on the order of 5 seconds. And this would not be identified by Ruftime because it's a positive delay. Ruftime only detects when there's a negative difference between clocks. So if you delay the message in the server, Ruftime can't detect that unless you add a specific mechanism to detect delay attacks.
Yes, but with the next response, if that is okay, I get what you're saying. All right, yeah.
Okay. Christoph, go ahead.
Perhaps I don't. We are talking about a request-response scheme, are we not? And if we are, then the client is going to detect that the round trip took a long time, which in itself should raise a certain kind of flag because that raises the uncertainty of. I mean, basically, Daniel, you raised this issue. The longer the message round trip is, the less precise the client's estimation about how accurate the server's time is. So that's a problem in and of itself. And so I don't see the scenario where the server is off and then someone, be it an attacker or the server themselves, delays their packets to hide that they're off by intentionally making round trips like unplausibly long. I don't really see a case where that's where something slips under the radar. Basically, I'm saying, well, this should raise an alarm, and that's an alarm.
So I think we're finally,
go ahead.
Tal Mizrahi, I think what you said is exactly the solution, which I'm looking for in the draft. By having the client verify the round trip time and bound it to a specific value, that would mean that rough time is only accurate. The accuracy is on the order of the maximum round trip time. So that's what I'm looking for in the draft. Currently, it doesn't have that. At least not that I saw.
Okay, maybe I interpreted it into that because it was obvious to me. Yes, if there's nothing in that looks at the round trip time, then it should be. Definitely.
I would, Watson here, co-author, I would very strongly appreciate you submitting text saying exactly that. I think it's important to remember that what we're producing is not a normal estimate of the errors or mid-term. We're producing a guarantee that you are within when the time of the server was within this bound where you have the delays. There's some formula for it, but it's pretty much this square window. And we're interested in applications where you have minutes of accuracy are required, seconds of accuracy are required, but there needs to be very high certainty that the server is not lying because we are not synchronizing the OS clock. The reason for this is that OS clocks are often deliberately set wrong, especially on mobile, and this is breaking security protocols and training people to click through certificate warnings. That's sort of the broader context here, explaining why we're making these choices.
Okay. Last comment.
All right. Two comments. I think that should go in the draft. That the threat model actually doesn't, again, it's threat model, right, that actually doesn't involve the operating system clock. That's an important thing. The other thing about Marcus' thing about GPS, you can actually spoof GPS. It's not that hard, right? And so that's the reason, I think, he's bringing that up, right? You actually have to point out, right, time scale comes from this. So, if when stuff happens to this server, You might not want to go after the server. You might actually want to go look at who's producing time for it.
Okay, the queue is empty. I think the only thing I heard was, do you all want to do another rev before a call for adoption, or do you want?
We can, I don't know. I mean, maybe we can have a come for adoption. Yeah, we can have it.
Stuart, right. It would be nice if there was a more conventional description of the protocol exchange, so that those of us who come from the packet world rather than the could sort of figure out what was actually exchanged. It's really just sort of some text in one of the sections.
Okay. So we'll do a call for adoption and continue discussion on the mailing list. Okay. Next up is Netta as a remote presenter. I think.
Yes, thank you. Hi.
All right. Can you see your slides?
Yep. Yeah, I do.
Excellent.
Can you hear me? Everything okay?
Yes, you are loud and clear.
Okay, thank you. So hi, I'm Netta, and today I'm going to present the update we made in the third draft of Chronos mechanism for MTP. It's a joint work with Danny Dolev, Tal Mizrahi, and Michal Shapira. Next slide, please. A short reminder, we consider the following threat model where the attacker has fully control of a large function of the NTP servers in the pool. He can change the content of NTP response and can also delay them. Of course, the attacker is malicious, and we assume that he is trying to shift the client's clock as much as possible. In the picture, you can see that the clients still receive both good time sample and bad time samples, and might choose the shifted one. Next slide, please. Thank you. And we also wanted to remind a Chronos solution where, on the one hand, we use large pool of NTP servers, and on the other hand, we randomly choose only 10 NTP servers and sample them. Lastly, we use small filters in order to remove outliers. Next slide, please. Thanks. Chronos, when compared to NTP, uses greater variety of servers, changing over time, and avoid the current NTP filters. This allows us to achieve probable security guarantees. However, it may affect the precision and accuracy of Chronos. While we can theoretically bound Chronos error by omega, which means 25 milliseconds, next slide, please.
Netta, can you just repeat your last sentence or two? We lost audio for about 30 seconds.
Sorry about that. I said that while theoretically we could bound Chronos precision or error by omega 25 milliseconds, we wanted to evaluate it in the wild and have realistic bounds. So in the new draft, we discussed. What? Everything is okay? Yeah?
Go ahead.
Okay. In our new draft, we discussed preliminary results for evaluating Chronos precision. The attacks were conducted in several locations, both in Europe and in the US. We thought that the Chronos achieved fair precision, less than 3 milliseconds, and moreover, the offset value in each update is similar to NTP, less than a 2 millisecond gap. While these results are not bad at all, we wanted to see if they can be improved without sacrificing security. Next slide, please. Can you move to the next slide?
He already has. Do you not see it?
Sorry. Okay. Yeah, I missed it. We tested two smoothing mechanisms. The first one was to favor small offset values within the remaining sample after filtering, if they're not far from the average. It proved to be very effective. And the second smoothing mechanism was to favor previous query server if their average offset is not far from random set. The approach didn't yield a significant improvement. Next slide, please. Thank you. In order to evaluate Honus, we measured it, both its average offset and its fluctuation. And the fluctuation means the average of offset derivative. We verified it on several locations. And slide, please. Thanks. In the graph, for instance, in Oregon, the x-axis is the average offset and the y-axis is the fluctuation, the average offset derivative. Each of the dots presents 30-minute experiment of one of the algorithms. We compare Honus in orange to Honus with the first smoothing mechanism in green and to NTP in blue. In every location, we can see that the results of Honus with the smoothing mechanism are closer to the NTP, which means that the green dots are closer to the NTP presented in the blue dots. Next slide, please. We can also see it in Frankfurt, and next slide, please, and in Virginia. Next slide. And in London. And note that the x-axis varies between 0 and 2 milliseconds, and the y-axis varies between 0 and 3 milliseconds. Next slide, please. Thanks. Next, we tested the security of algorithm under attack. Servers which shift packets, timestamps, and the error is growing linearly with time. And we use the servers as part of the pool. We use DNS servers to return our embedded server IP instead of some of the pool servers IP. We saw that rapidly increasing shift didn't affect both Honus and NTP. Probably the shift was too high and the embedded servers were ignored. Next slide, please. However, for slowly increasing shift, the NTP is shifting while Honus remains the same. Next slide, please. Thanks. To conclude, we tested a proof of concept Honus implementation under normal scenarios and under attacks. We saw that Honus precision is closer than to NTP than expected, several minutes instead of 25 milliseconds, while the smoothing algorithm yields even better results. And we also saw that Honus is secure, even facing a slowly increasing shift, while NTP isn't. And the smoothing didn't affect Honus security. And now we are continuing to evaluate Honus performance and security for different attack strategies and different locations. Thank you, and I can take questions now.
Okay, hold on a second. Jose?
Hi, everybody. I am Ignacio Alvarez Amalin. I would like to ask about the condition of the experiment. So increasing shift and high increasing shift. What is slow? What is increasing? More or less a little more information about the experiment. Many thanks.
Okay. Yeah, sure. Can you move to the slide before the last one? Yeah, this one. So, for example, when we were talking about rapidly shift, we are talking about a slope which add 0.01 second per second, and here when we are talking about slowly increasing shift, we're presenting an attack of adding 0.001 second per every second to the time.
That is of the order of 10 milliseconds, more or less.
What?
10 milliseconds. Sorry, I was lost with your 0, 0. It's 10 milliseconds, 1 millisecond.
Yeah, sure. Yeah,
10,
it is.
10 milliseconds. Okay.
For every second, yeah.
Okay, many.
And of course, it's only a preliminary result, and we're going to keep examining more. And these results are, I didn't say it, it's for Oregon, and we would like to expand our research. So, yeah, it's basically the first stage.
Okay, any other questions? Any other feedback?
Hi. My name is Heiko Gerso from Heidelberg. I would like to know in your experiment, how many servers did you use? Probably I didn't get that. So in order to get NTP to jump between two servers as it looks, you probably, how many of time sources basically did you choose for this experiment?
Yeah, good question. So I chose for the NTP. It's basically running on the default NTP. Choosing four NTP servers and Honus, and update every 64 seconds. And for Honus, we chose 12 servers, and from among them, we chose randomly for each time. But for every update, we chose different 12 servers.
Okay, so you say that you used 4 servers with the NTP basically client.
Yeah,
okay.
And 4 servers at Honus by the end. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Okay. I think we need to get a little bit more feedback on this draft on the mailing list. Any thoughts on next steps or how to work with it would also be appreciated on the mailing list. Okay. Thank you very much, Netta.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye. Okay, go back one slide, I think. Is it there? Oh, no, it's on the agenda slide, but that's okay. You don't have to go back because it'll only be a sentence. So the next thing on the agenda is actually the NTP Yang module, and the authors have a conflicting meeting. They have told me that they have some additional changes they want to make. We have had an initial MIB doctor review. It's gone through that. They want to do one more update, and then they believe it'll be ready for working group last call. So, so that is pretty close. So this brings us to the end of all of the stuff that we got in advance of the meeting. So if you go to the next slide, this is sort of was originally named on the agenda my housekeeping section. So it was drafts that we haven't made a lot of progress on or didn't have updates on. So at this point, and I have to admit, there was a ton of traffic on this morning. I had asked Anshal to repost the data minimization draft so that we could, yeah, it was. Well, I guess the point being it was reposted and then there was a ton of email, but I haven't had time to read. So is there any, is there a way forward on that draft? I mean, we were ready to wrap that up and send it on. So maybe we just...
So I think I said this on the list. I really think that objecting to a draft on the basis that future work is going to change the way it works is sort of Not interesting.
Okay. So the last point of this was it had gone through working group last call. We were ready to send it on, and we needed it. We were waiting for comments, and so okay. Go ahead, Harlan.
Was that last comment directed toward me?
What last comment?
The one that said objecting to something based on something in the future was not interesting?
Yes.
Okay, fair enough. I would like to hear how you make your decisions about whether or not something needs to be a standard and then implemented versus not, because you seem to switch back and forth on whether or not you want it to be proven or if you want to wait to implement it until a standard has been passed.
My concern is simply that one single implementation shouldn't have a privileged position defining the way the spec works. I mean, I understand the consideration that we need to use these fields in other ways, but I don't see any conflict between having that minimization draft and then in a later draft saying, well, this is the other meanings we're going to give to these fields, and if you want to do this, you ignore the data minimization draft. I don't see why it isn't a suitable solution for everyone.
Okay, well, I will answer that by saying you have your knowledge and experience and I have mine.
So that's not, let's not go there. That's not very helpful. So
fair enough.
Go ahead, Anshul.
Hi, Anshul Malhotra. I would just say that there is always an option to update the draft later if there is a need for some future use of these fields.
Okay. All right, so I'm popping you out of the queue, Harlan. All right, so on this draft, hello, Christoph.
Regarding Harlan's comments, the thing that you didn't really answer, Harlan, and maybe this can make us skip a whole lot of discussion. The only motion that I saw put forward was to change a few instances of should language into may language. And I don't really think that would even make that much of a difference. And also, from the definition of should and may that is available, I think that should is just more appropriate in these cases. But also, I don't think this is something that we should get hung up on in either case. And if that's the only thing, then maybe we can just skip this and yeah.
Okay. Go ahead, Harlan.
I have technical objections to the proposal as written, and I think those are pretty clearly stated. It is a bad idea to tell people they should, which is effectively a must, send zeros for ref ID poll and leap indicator when there is a clear situation where a significant use case will be prohibited by this, and then to come up and say, well, you know, it's okay to say no because people can always, you're either telling people to ignore the standard and not follow what it says, or you're using a hammer to kill something that shouldn't need to be done. And what we're doing here is if this was religion, we'd be writing canon. We're writing standards here, and I think we need to hold ourselves to a higher standard for what we accomplish and what we're asking people to do. So if you don't agree with me or you guys don't feel that my technical objections are worth it, that's cool, that's your choice.
So I think that the way the IETF deals with technical objections is consensus calls. And I think what we need to do is take the exchange of email that's happened over the last 12 hours and review that and turn it into specific consensus calls that we can ask on the mailing list. Because I think that's the way the IETF moves forward in this space. Go ahead.
Yeah. First, responding to Karen, I think if I think if we were, I don't think these objections are new, and if we were going back through mailing list archives, we would find there was already pretty clear consensus. But secondly, responding to Harlan, your objections are based on, or are not based on use cases that exist today. They are based on potential future use cases that would require modifications to how clients behave. So, and in particular, if clients want, if we want to advance those things in the future and have clients implement that behavior, the right way to do that is to put the information that we think servers will need to implement their end into an extension field rather than put it in the header, because that way those extension fields can be encrypted using NTS and protect clients' privacy that way.
Just to respond back to you, I agree that we have had these discussions. I would also agree that, and Dieter and I have discussed this, we have not been as clear about having a discussion and then declaring a consensus. And so I think for some of these, even though we've had the conversations, we just need to do a tiny little exercise where we can, ask a clear question and get a group of people to answer. Unless we've done this before, and I need to go back and look. But
yeah. If any further formality is necessary on the point, I would urge that it get done quickly, simply because data minimization is a normative reference for NTS, and therefore one blocks the other.
Yeah, I was aware of that. So, and it may be, maybe you can help me go back to the archives and figure out if we have a consensus or not. We haven't been as clear, about identifying specifically consensus calls, because in general, we get to a point without needing formal consensus calls on individual issues. We just do them on the documents, but in some cases we may need to do that. Christoph, I think you are in the speaking position. If we haven't already resolved this, perhaps you don't. Go ahead if you have something new to say. You'll just skip it. Don't want to discourage you, but
hey,
go
thanks,
ahead,
Karen.
Suresh.
So one of the things I want to point out to Harlan is that there's a reason there's a should, right? Like should actually means that there could be legitimate exceptions where you don't have to follow it, right? So that's if adding some text, saying for example or something like that, some exemplary text which leaves out some room for you to do the stuff. If that would work for you, that could be an easy way to get rid of this deadlock, right? Because as I said, it's not a must, right? Should is pretty strong, but should actually means that there could be legitimate reasons you don't have to do it. So think of that as one way of getting this unstuck, Karen. Okay, so thanks.
All right, thank you, Suresh. Harlan?
Thank you, Suresh. Yes, I know about the difference between should and must. My concern is this document doesn't even mention any of these other cases, and it assumes that the blanket should to zero these things out will I guess that's my complaint. And I will again point out that Daniel just stood up there and said that there are times he wants to see working code before anything happens, and there are other times he says he wants to see a standard before anybody does working code. And I really wish I could understand the algorithm that picks that.
Well, I don't think I heard him say that. So
really, he said since it wasn't in place and running today, we shouldn't bother with it.
No, what he said is that it from an IETF process perspective, it's a normative reference for NTS.
No, the normative reference for NTS, I don't understand how that has a play in this. He was talking about how he didn't want to, my understanding is he didn't want to lend any credence to my objection because since there wasn't code out there today in sufficient form that would behave the way I recommend, we should completely ignore that case and discount it.
Daniel Franca, these are these are future use cases in both senses. Neither the code nor any draft standard exists.
So what?
Okay, this is.
This goes to capability and what we want to do in the future. You guys
Har-
want to drive a
Harlan?
stake.
Harlan?
Oh, never mind. Okay, Karen, I'm sorry. Never mind.
Go ahead, Suresh.
As I said, right, like, so Harlan, like, what I would recommend is write some exemplary text, right? This is not like actual thing, right? Say like somebody might need to go, bypass this should and write it up, and then we'll do the consensus process, like Karen says, right? So as I said, like, don't make it like anything concrete. Say like exemplary, like why somebody would not follow the should, and then let's discuss that and see if that's something that's going to be useful, right? So and sometimes, like, you're in the rough. I've been in the rough like multiple times. So, but let's try it out, right? Like, try to write some exemplary text, and we'll go from there.
Thank you. So the next one I had in my housekeeping list was interleave modes, and I just wanted. I believe we talked about this at the interim. Miroslav, I was wondering if you would mind giving us a quick status of where that is and what we want to do with that. Or, I don't know, Anshal, do you have a... Just leave it to Miroslav. If Miroslav's online. Yeah, he is there. All right. Well, we do have a draft on interleave modes. We need to figure out what we're doing with that.
I don't think there was...
Oh, here he comes. I'm
Hi,
putting you
can
on
you
the
hear me?
spot, Miroslav. Sorry.
Okay, I think
yes, sort of. Go ahead.
there's only one remaining issue, and that was whether the servers should be allowed to use the same pair of timestamps multiple times as it is currently specified. I sent an email about this, and we discussed this on the previous meeting. And the issue is that, as it's specified, it's not tolerant to errors in the processing of packets on clients. If we don't allow the servers to reuse the timestamps, the protocol should be able to fall back to the basic mode, and that's probably a good thing. I think we just need to update the document and submit the new version.
Okay. That
Thanks.
would be great. If you could do that, we'd be appreciated. Thank you. The next one I wanted to ask about was the draft on implementing time. Did you want to say anything about that one? Just what the status or what the thoughts are on? This is what I call my housekeeping part of the agenda. So.
No, this draft, hi Anshul Malhotra, this draft has not been updated since last face-to-face. Probably in the next, we don't have any updates on.
Right. Do you anticipate continued work on it? That's what I'm.
Yes.
Okay. That's all you really need to say. I just wanted to know if there was continuing work on it or not. So the next set of drafts. So Harlan, you submitted a bunch of drafts last night. So nobody has had any time to review them. So what I would like you to do is to spend maybe 2 or 3 minutes on each draft and tell us what you wanted to accomplish. And so hopefully people can figure out which ones to review first. All right?
Sure. Is there a list of them somewhere we can look at? I'll take them in order. For whatever it's worth, the updates I made don't contain any significant changes. It all goes to language cleanups and other things people have requested I do to make them.
I can do it from here. Okay, so I will step you through them. How's that? But
okay.
So the first one is the RefID updates.
Okay, and that is the IPv6 RefID and something else. I could bring
This
it up
is
here.
the not you RefID and the IPv6 RefID.
Okay, yeah, those are just not you, is Sharon's proposal.
So I don't think we need to talk about what they actually are. What I want to know is what your objective was in moving from the last draft to this draft. Like, what updates have been made?
Because people told me that they didn't want the abstract to be so long. They wanted references to the GitHub repo. They wanted a little bit more language in the security stuff, and I basically did a bunch of cleanups. Sam told me that it's bad form to simply use pictures to show people what a packet looks like, and that it's important to have descriptive text, so I added that stuff.
Okay, so on this document for the working group, this one is it is a working group document. Technically, according to the data tracker, it's in working group last call. But basically what happened was it went through working group last call and we had a lot of issues and we didn't actually move it out of working group last call. So at the very least, it needs another revision. So I would encourage people to read this one and comment on the list. The next one, Harlan, is well, the next one that we have here is the that you updated last night was the extension fields document. What I'd like to mention with that one is we had a working group consensus call on that, and we declared it to be a dead document in a sense that if what you have done is a tweak on the previous document, then we've already decided that this is not work we're going to progress. So is the update a change in strategy, or is it the same?
It's a partial change in strategy, and I'm waiting to hear back from Sam about the IETF extension field registry.
Okay.
So it's not quite ready to, it's not quite ready. It's just a step closer.
All right. So I would like to remind you that we have declared it dead, and so there has to be a good reason for us to resurrect it.
I understand.
Okay. Then the next is the extended information extension field. Did you want to talk briefly about the changes in this one from and the next set of documents? These are all at this point individual submissions. We have not adopted them as working group items yet. The last instruction that was given to the working group was that we would proceed with extension field specifications that were compliant with RFC 7822. And so it's my understanding.
All of them are compliant with 7822.
Right.
Or they can be.
They are, or did you say are or can?
They are listed in a way that works. And since 7822 says things like the size of an extension field is dependent upon whether or not it's the last extension field, it's compatible with that. I didn't see any benefit to complicating the individual proposal, saying here's how long this is if it's an early packet, and here's how long it is if it's the last packet. 7822 cares about that. The proposal will all say, well, make this extension field the length that is appropriate. So the extended information, huh?
Oh, I thought you were done, and I was giving Daniel the floor because he's at the queue. He's at the physical queue. So.
By my quick reading of Suggest RefID last night, and I didn't go. I may be missing something in the text because I just looked at the diagrams. But it looks like the body for that is only 4 octets, which complies with RFC 7822 in either case, regardless of its position.
It can be made as long as anybody wants it, and the payload for a RefID is 4 octets. So if it needs to be padded, it's perfectly fine to pad it.
Okay, so back to so I set the stage by saying that we are open to extension fields if they are compatible with RFC 7822.
They're compatible.
You said that. You didn't let me finish. So now what I'm going to do is go through each of the new drafts that you submitted, and I'd like you to just speak specifically to what what has changed and what action you would like the working group to take on them. So the first one is the extended information one.
Yeah, I'd like that going to last call.
Well, it's not actually a working group document yet.
And
So
it should be a working group document.
all right. And did you make any?
I addressed all the feedback I got from Sam and some of the stuff Danny commented about and a couple of other things. And extended information may end up getting another tweak from me soon because I have another idea. But
okay, so for this, all right. So for this one, we want to do a call for adoption for the working group. The next one is also an individual submission. It's the I do extension field. You want to talk about that one briefly?
It's the I do extension field has turned out to be very important when dealing with a mix of new and legacy clients. And I basically cleaned up the language, and hopefully Sam will look at it and decide it's better than it was before, but the content of it is pretty much the same. If that isn't a working group document, I'd like it to be considered as one.
Okay. The next one is the last DF one.
Those are pretty much the same. If they aren't working group documents, they should be. All the problems we have with the legacy MAC are because it's not an extension field and it's ambiguous. So by allowing people to put the MAC in an extension field, that completely goes away. Similarly, the last extension field is an unambiguous way to say, I'm the last extension field. And if you want to make that 28 bytes long, great. Without it, it is everything I can see says it's not necessary, and it's perfectly fine as a 4-byte last extension field. But you can make it as however big you want. It's compatible with 7822.
Okay. And then the last extension field that you have a suggested ref ID one.
Yeah, that's good for a bunch of things. It's similar to not you and the rest of it. There's no way for server A to tell server B, if you use me as your system peer, please use this ref ID, and that's what this proposal does. Since there's no other way to communicate those, this allows people to increase their security by using a nonce, an effectively random nonce. Could be encrypted, could be a bunch of things, but it's basically a way to remove some of the exploitable aspects of a ref ID. And it's also useful, for example, in the leap smear ideas that are about to happen.
Okay, so that's 4 proposals on the floor for new extension fields. None of these are currently working group documents, so we will do a call for adoption on these and see if the working group is willing to take them up. The last document that was submitted is the leap smear ref ID. I know this was originally part of the other ref ID updates, and we pulled it out because the leap smear piece was more controversial. Do you want to talk about that?
Sure. There needs to be a clearly visible method in the core packet to identify that a system peer is a leap smear. It's following leap smear time instead of correct time. And that's what this does. It makes it easy and obvious to see that a system is synchronized to a leap smearing server. If you never use leap smearing stuff, then you'll never see it. If you are in a situation where you might see leap smearing servers, it can be incredibly helpful both to the systems in question as well as the operators who want to keep an eye on things to know whether or not somebody's doing leap smear.
Okay. So this is also, do you have any additional changes you want, or is this also something you would like to see adopted?
I would like to see it adopted.
All right, so with that, I'm popping you out of the queue. So basically, my motivation for doing this was to go through all of the things that we have that are outstanding and see if we can get some of these things wrapped up. So when these calls for adoption come out, I need to be sure that people read the document, please, and comment on whether this is something the working group wishes to undertake. The one thing Christoph. Yes, Christoph?
One question for Harlan. In the Leapsmear RefID document, would you consider giving the option of communicating other information, like other timescales as information? For example, people wanting to send out TAI instead of UTC. I mean, this basically says I'm using a different timescale than proper UTC. Why limit it to just the one?
Go ahead, Harlan.
The purpose of the Leapsmear RefID is to show that that somebody's following a leap smearing server that is different from true time. If you want to run your systems on a different time scale, that's not something that I think we can use the RefID for, because the primary purpose of the RefID is loop detection. And if you're going to be running a system in TAI, you use a special RefID to say that my system is TAI instead of something else, you then lose loop detection. Well, you lose it permanently as opposed to during a 24-hour period when you're making an adjustment once every 2 years. So there are other ways to handle what time scale you're using, and I've got those are on our discussion list for NTP version 5.
Daniel Franca. Harlan, I think you're making a good argument for why we shouldn't be putting this in the RefID at all and put it somewhere else. Let RefID be for loop detection and let's stop overloading its semantics any more than it already is.
Go ahead, Watson. Oh, good. Christoph. Okay, go ahead, Christoph.
No, I was just going to say the same thing. I'm supporting Daniel's point. This Harlan's answer sounded exactly like a good point for why it was a bad idea to communicate in that way.
Go ahead, Watson.
Watson Live from Cover. I think that with NTS, a lot of this, let's try and negotiate extensions in the UDP packets, we can do by extending the NTS key exchange protocol. It's very extensible. And then we don't have to worry about packet size limitations, which we're creeping up on.
Okay.
Daniel Frank again. I agree with Watson. A lot of these negotiation bits can be done quite easily with new NTSKE record types.
Okay. Any more discussion on the list? Go ahead, Harlan.
Be quick. If you don't want to use leap smears and you don't want to do the other thing, don't. I'm more interested in making sure people don't prevent folks who want to use this stuff from doing it.
Okay. Any other comments or questions? Excellent. The one thing I meant to mention earlier that I forgot is I wanted to acknowledge Anshul with the new RFC on the Mac. So congratulations. Thank you for doing that work. Any other business working group items? Nope. We will, in all likelihood, try to schedule a couple interims between now and whenever the next meeting is, I guess July. So stay tuned for the scheduling of those. Anything else? All right. With that, I give you 30 minutes of your day back. Oh, those of you who are going to join us for dinner, we'll be sending out an email at some point about where we're going.